Last season, House of the Dragon wrapped up with a spectacular dragon battle amid flashes of lightning and pearls of thunder. It might be unfair to expect this new season to open on such an arresting note, but then again, a sense of stakes for these characters would not be a bad thing to establish. Instead, we get an episode that, for much of its running time, feels like a lengthier last season on House of the Dragon montage before a tiny bit of real action gets underway after the midpoint.
The North owes a great duty to the Seven Kingdoms, one older than any oath.
We start at Winterfell, as the Starks go to deliver volunteers to the Wall to mark the start of winter. Harry Colette's Jacaerys is with them, trying to win the North's loyalty to his mother's cause. Cregan Stark offers him older troops for backup, all he can spare because, sing it with us, winter is coming. Alas, that's all we get of the plain-speaking Northerners because a raven arrives and Jacaerys learns that his brother is dead and he must fly home to Dragonstone.
Urgent news from Dragonstone.
There, he'll eventually find Rhaenyra. She flies south first, to scour the coastline for Lucerys' remains. She retrieves something to burn, and demands that her council bring her Aemon. But otherwise, she's lost in grief, missing in action just when her blacks need to move to secure key allegiances and fortresses for the coming conflict.
Was this the Queen's command?
The Queen remains absent.
Matt Smith's Daemon is left in charge of the war effort, but without the authority to be effective, only a prince consort and not a king. He tries to order Rhaenys around and is rebuffed. He challenges her on her failure to just incinerate all the Greens last season, but she is unrepentant. Daemon believes that he and Rhaenys together, or rather their dragons Caraxes and Meleys, can take on the huge Vhagar. And maybe he's right. It looks like we won't be finding out anytime soon though.
Fly with me. It is a command.
Would that you were the king.
Helpfully, Rhaenyra's knight Sir Eric Cargill finds the spymaster and plotter Mysaria aboard a ship and brings her to Daemon. He soon turns to her for help in killing Aemon. Sir Eric counsels against assassination and shows his pain at the Targaryen divide. His oath as a Kingsguard, he says, was to defend the royal family.
So what were we to do when they turn against one another?
It's a plaintive note, and a welcome bit of character insight for the sometimes underserved Kingsguard. Remember that his twin Sir Eric serves Aegon.
You and your traitorous twin.
Back in King's Landing, Olivia Cook's Alicent is hooking up with the awful Sir Criston Cole. Still sour-faced despite the hanky-panky. She tells him this is the last time they're gonna do this. But by the end of A Son for a Son, she will have already gone back on this promise. After a clash in council, as Alicent suggests peace, overtures to Rhaenyra and her father shoots her down. She and Sir Otto meet privately and agree to work more closely. He finally accepts her as a true co-conspirator and not merely a genetically convenient reproductive system. Yay, girl power?
A fine strategy, daughter. But you must accept that the path to victory now is one of violence.
We also get a glimpse here of Aegon as king. His fawning frat bros turned couriers call the lazy, disengaged sod the magnanimous. He momentarily tries to live up to that during a public audience, but quickly tires of the effort. In council, he'd rather allow his little son Jaehaerys to distract his advisors than listen. He tolerates, barely, his sister wife Helena, a slightly otherworldly girl who was something of a simpleton in the books, but who has strange insights here. She says she's afraid of rats, and by the end of the episode, it's clear why.
For the rats.
That's because Daemon has set about getting Rhaenyra her head. Sneaking into King's Landing, he recruits a disgruntled Goldcloak and a rat catcher, known respectively as Blood and Cheese in the book, unnamed here, telling them to infiltrate the Red Keep and bring him Aemon's head. When they reasonably ask what to do if they can't find him, he muses silently, but it later becomes clear that he must have told them a son for a son. When they can't find Aemon, therefore, they find the king's kids and put a knife to Queen Helena's throat to force her to tell them which is which. They kill the tiny heir to the throne, cutting off his head to bring to Daemon. These are irredeemable bastards, underscored unnecessarily by Cheese kicking his own dog, as if killing an infant wasn't enough. A Son for a Son finishes in silence, to leave you haunted by the sound of butchery. The murder itself is heard but not seen, because even Westeros draws a line somewhere. But there are a few other things to note. Characters mentioned in the book arrive on screen for the first time. In the Sea Snake shipyards, we meet a shipwright and a sailor called Alan of Hull. He's only a young teenager in the books, and the fact that they've aged him up may mean he'll see more action. One of Aegon's petitioners is a smith called Hugh, played by Kieran Boo. He's given a fraction too much attention to just be a one-off character.
Our victory depends on the efforts of the small folk.
We also get a reminder that Sir Larys Strong is a deeply creepy dude who scares Alicent even as she uses him. Larys also tries to turn Aegon against his grandfather in hand. Aemond has had enough waiting and wants to fly to war. He tries to enlist Sir Criston's support and, like Daemon, he sees Harrenhal as a key stronghold. Could be trouble in the future.
It is a canny scheme.
It's a well-shot episode, without some of the dim lighting that made some conversations last season almost invisible. Sure, there are some dark moments like Mysaria's below deck's hiding spot, but there are also beautiful scenes, with beams of moonlight illuminating Rhaenyra and Jacaerys' reunion on Dragonstone, the intercutting between Alicent's candle lighting for her mother Aleri, her late husband Viserys, and after some hesitation, Lucerys, and the Blacks burning what remains of Lucerys is effective too. But there's a downside to that opening scene in the north. The wall must remind us of the wider stakes of the battle for Westeros. A genuinely world-ending threat lurks out there just under the trees. These Targaryen squabbles are just a distraction from the real threat, and in fact, risk Westeros' ability to meet the threat of the Night King. All this plotting and this horrible murder only weaken the dragon riders who should lead the fight against the ice. And that's a frustrating truth at the heart of this whole show. Alas, now that both sides have taken heartbreaking losses, all hope of peace seems lost. Surely the war must now begin.
But there are many pieces at play here, some of which you can't yet see.
Aside from that one shocking murder, perhaps thankfully less shocking than it might have been visually, this is a period of phony war for the Greens and Blacks, as each side tries to find alternatives to violence but finds none. It's also an episode with relatively little action, setting up the stakes for this season rather than delivering huge amounts of drama in its own right. Still, that final bloody slaying shows that the cost of all this maneuvering will be high, and that it will be borne by those least able to defend themselves. It's a horrifying illustration of the cost of a civil war. With a family turned against itself, even the youngest and most innocent are not safe. For more TV reviews, check out what we thought of The Boys Season 4 premiere and Star Wars The Acolyte. And for everything else, stick with IGN.